This patch is amazing. Bandai released a new Elden Ring patch today called Patch 1.12, just before the DLC blesses us with its delightful presence. It's mostly a balance patch for both PvE and PvP, with tons of interesting changes. Of course, we're not going to cover every single specific change, but we will showcase the most important ones while briefly mentioning the less significant ones. Without anything else to say, let's go! For the first general changes, there are 5 new hairstyles added in the hair menu. There's a new map menu that allows you to change some display settings, as well as deactivating certain summoning pools in case you don't want to get summoned in some areas. There's a new tab called Recent Items, which can be toggled on and off from the settings menu. It shows you recently acquired items, as well as marking the newly obtained items with a shiny icon. Items used in Coliseum matches will be replenished after the match ends, so no more grinding strings for those sweet drawstring greases. And you can now ride Torrent when battling the Elden Beast. I gotta say, whoever managed to convince FromSoft higher-ups to make these last 2 changes deserves a raise. Now, the PvP balance changes. Keep in mind that these are only applied to PvP, so don't cry. Your precious PvE is safe. By far the most significant one is that power-stanced weapons received a tremendous damage nerf. And on top of that, power-stanced spears and power-stanced great spears received direct nerfs to their damage on top of the power-stancing nerf. So the damage these 2 sucky setups deal now is kinda balls. But it's a well-deserved nerf, to be honest. Not only that, but they also received a tracking nerf. And the poise damage values of power-stanced attacks was also changed, meaning that armor sets with high poise can withstand 1 power-stanced attack. Huge change. After being affected by madness or sleep, the status effect build-up will be halted for a short period of time. It's not a lot of time, but it's certainly something that will be helpful. Considering that one of the main sources of sleep build-up, the Ripple Crescent halberd, has been nerfed, and its arcane scaling does not provide as much status build-up as before. Poise damage for all of these types of weapons was increased for certain attacks. These attacks are attacks subsequent to the first one-handed light attack, as they now deal at least 115 points of poise damage, instead of the old 102 points. Poise damage of axes has been directly buffed against other players, unlike other weapons like curved swords, which went from dealing 135 points of poise damage on their first one-handed light attack to now dealing way less. Axes can stagger with a one-handed hit. The Ice Hatchet in particular looks pretty sweet in this patch, because it's fast as fuck. More testing will solidify its status in the meta. The poise damage of fists and claws has been reduced, so the almighty true combos of the Raptor Talons are no longer possible on enemies with high poise. This is a well-applied nerf, but it still makes us sad. Heavy thrusting swords have been directly nerfed, for some reason, both in their damage and their dual-wielding tracking. We seriously cannot understand why, since the weapon class was never that great, to be honest. They are way crappier than before though, and that's saying something. The damage of some Ashes of War has decreased, the most notable ones being Transient Moonlight. Which received a significant damage nerf. Spinning Slash, which is now pretty garbage. Thunderstorm, which is now absolute garbage, and Radan's Reign, which is now astronomical garbage. They completely killed these Ashes of War, especially Radan's Reign. Options for invaders don't look so good anymore. And finally, Black Flame Protection has the nerf it needed, and Bestial Sling practically doesn't deal poise damage anymore. Now that we're done with PvP exclusive changes, let's look at the most relevant general balance changes. Guarding against all of these weapon categories will now consume a lot more stamina. Reapers received a significant tracking buff. Axes, great axes, hammers, flails and reapers received a speed buff on their attacks. Once again, the most notable one being the Isarind hatchet. We seriously can't wait to test this one in real matches. Light bows and longbows received a speed buff in consecutive attacks.
Whoa! This is worthless.
Although simply turning and burning will still give you more fire cadence than doing regular attacks. Craftable ammunition received a direct damage boost. I suppose this was to incentivize their use more over golem arrows. But the good thing about the golem arrows is not the damage, it's the shockwave. Some armaments received some direct adjustments, once again the most notable ones being the Ripple Crescent Halberd and the Ripple Blade, which lost significant status pressure. Also, the patch notes claim that the Serpent Hunter was buffed, but it was actually nerfed, since now the crouching attacks are slower. By 2 frames to be precise. Some skills were also adjusted for PvP and PvE. The one everyone will womp about is probably Taker's Flame, which now deals less poise damage and doesn't knock down. Parries were adjusted for the weaker versions of the skill, and now dagger parries, for example, are very consistent. We love this change, and for the final general change, some Ashes of War with crazy hyper armor like Stormcaller and Stormstomp have decreased poise generation speed, meaning that you can't mash the Ash of War out of hitstun anymore. Lastly, the bug involving last rites is gone. Which means that the infinite physic glitch that converted all elemental damage into HP is also gone. I honestly can't believe they patched this. I'm really impressed. And that basically covers all the significant changes for this patch. You can check the patch notes in the video description if you want to take a look for yourself. Now all that's left is to wait for the Land of Shadows to open its gates. The chainsaw is still in the game, by the way.